First up, Soumya Kanti Ghosh, Group Chief Economic Advisor of the State Bank of India, is joining us. And Mr. Ghosh, I really do appreciate your time. Your report has now been hailed by the Prime Minister as well in a LinkedIn post. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, actually this report is a visualization based on the actual data of income tax in the last 10 years. In fact, if you look into the income tax data, it's basically a repository of wealth of information, and using the data, you can actually, we have estimated whatever is said in the report. The most important thing to know that I think there is a lot of misnomers today out in the public domain. The first thing is that you always say 4 to 55% of the Indian population pay taxes. That's actually incorrect. 37% of the total formal labor force today is paying taxes. That is, 1 in every formal labor family is paying taxes. The second thing is that 64% of the income tax returns are actually now below 5 lakh. That means they don't need to pay any taxes. And the third thing is that if you look into the number of taxpayers in the last 10 years, they have expanded from 30 million and this year, as on July 31st, 2023, I think close to 68 million has filed returns. And if you take the late returns also, which is basically filed with fine till 2024 March, this number could actually top 85 million and if not closer to 90 million. So from 30 million to 90 million is a threefold rise in taxpayers. And as you said from the report, that 13.6% of the overall population, overall taxpayers have actually moved into the higher income buckets. I think that is something which means that people are experiencing an increase in their taxable income as of today.
In terms of India's economic revival since 1991, how important is this change of 13+%? Is this the largest such jump that we have witnessed from, let's say, the under 5 lakh per annum bracket to above?
Yeah, first, Shivani, let me also just put in aside some of the misnomers which people may want to say. I think people can always say that we should also look into constant prices. Yes, we should look into constant prices also, but income data is always looked at current prices. So basically, when you are comparing a size of the economy, nominal GDP today and as of 20 years down the line, you will always compare the size of the economy at current prices. Having said that also, the numbers which are based over here are also based on a very conservative real GDP growth rate of 6.5%. So that's why we're assuming that around 25% of the income tax filers will progress to the upper echelons as on 2047, and the per capita income only will rise to around close to $14,400 or so. Please remember that this assumes a GDP growth rate of only 6.5%, which is lower than today. There is a similar report recently published of RBI, which had said that the per capita income could rise beyond 20,000, and even at 14,500, we are ahead of the definition of a developed economy. Now, having said that, I think this 13.6 number is actually a sizable number, and in terms of the progression which we are seeing in the last 10 years, I think there indeed has been considerable progress. If I just look into the data, nothing else. The only thing is that in those 2 years, if the pandemic had not happened, this jump could have been even higher. But taking that unforeseen circumstance into side, I think in terms of an progression, I think that's quite a decent progression for an economy which has moved from being 10th to the 5th largest as on 2022 last year.
So you don't think that it's a fair criticism that has come in from some quarters that, this should also be looked at keeping in mind inflation, and inflation is a very hot topic right now?
No, I think, one can always ask that what is in real terms, but if you also make a 2T rule of thumb, using 2T rule of thumb, even if you make and say real times comparison, the income has actually gone up more than twice. So if you even say discount by that factor. But at the end of the day, as I said to you, income is always measured in terms of the current prices. Because a GDP of a country is at current prices. So I don't see much of the criticism behind that, because at the end of the day, if your income is rising, that is good for you. And of course, if you also look into the inflation numbers for the last 10 years, the average inflation is actually not more than 5.2%. So even if I take 5% inflation, if I discount it, that your income should have more than doubled in the last 10 years. So that also is a matter of achievement by any means.
Okay, the other big issue that people talk about, Mr. Ghosh, is that the middle class in itself is a very undefined body in India. The actual numbers of what is often quoted as being India's middle class could be much less. What, according to you, is the size of our middle class?
See, it's difficult to say because our study has actually concentrated on the middle income class. I am quoting the term middle income class. There are some studies which talks about the middle income class, size of the middle income class today that I think by 2047. We have not ventured into that category. Instead, what we have tried to do, we have tried to see the number of tax filers in the economy. If the number of tax filers in the economy, which is currently around 90 million, jumps to around 487 million as on 2047, this itself is a signal that the middle class of India is going, because at the end of the day, our report actually synonymously talks about the middle income class and the middle class in the same way, because the middle class are the people who always pay taxes, honestly files returns, and they are the people who are moving up the ladder. You can define the middle class in terms of an upper middle class, lower middle class, neo middle class, but at the end of the day, these are the people who pay taxes, and the higher is their proportion, the higher, and that's why we have calculated the threshold income, because there are many definitions of which income bucket you should be for the middle class, but as of today, the threshold income of a middle class, or average middle class, is 13 lakhs, meaning that they are earning around 1 lakh rupees in gross terms per month, which was 4.4 lakhs a 10-year back, which was basically around 30 to 35,000 10 years back.
Okay. And I also want to understand from you that some people say that, this growth is not equal. It's very, it's not distributed equally in India. I want to understand from you, just as a pan-India phenomenon, is this growth of people moving above in the IT brackets coming from across the country, or are there some states that are really leading this growth, leaving the others behind?
See, I think the most important aspect of the report, if you have looked into, is that the top 5 states which are where the tax status are coming in, Uttar Pradesh is one of them, West Bengal is one of them, and Rajasthan is one of them, and of course there is Gujarat and Maharashtra. So people actually, there's a lot of people from West Bengal who actually are also migrated to other states and filing taxes. So even in terms of the states, we are seeing a dispersion in terms of the tax returns. So, and another important thing is that even if you do, and we had done a dipstick study even for the last 10 years, which is not a part of the report, in terms of the in terms of the GDP of the states. You'll be surprised to know that if you do in economic terms, which is we call it a Gini coefficient index, we found that the index actually has narrowed down, meaning that there has been now the gap between the rich states and the states which are actually not so rich are narrowing down over time. So that means that people in these states also are gaining from the economic benefit. And most importantly, after the GST reforms have been introduced, in the last 2 years, given the significant financial development which has happened to the states fiscal position today are much better than what it was earlier. And this is reflected in the data. If the data is in the public domain, states' fiscal position are much better. So if I take all that factored into consideration, I think it may be a little bit, it will not be correct to say that there has been a significant jump in inequality. Of course, inequality, when there is growth, there will be inequality. That's an wisdom which happens across every countries. We have seen that how, even a developed country that also happens. So India cannot be an exception to that. But my sense is that the idea is that how it is narrowing down over time. So in my sense, I think too much should not be read into that. But of course, there needs to be concerted efforts in terms of reducing the income gap between the rich and the poor.
Absolutely. Well, the outlook is good. At least that's what the numbers say. And states are doing their best. All states are benefiting. And this new middle class or the threshold class is definitely increasing and improving. Soumya Ghosh, thanks a lot for joining us and giving us more of your perspective on the data.
Thank you.